Hey guys, I thought we would kick off Graphic Novel Week with a post about my favorite graphic novels. So, before I get into the list, and before you all jump all over me for not having a certain graphic novel in the list, let me just preface this by saying I haven't really been reading graphic novels all that long, and it's very sporadic when I do, and I tend to choose things on either friend recommendation or, hey, that sounds really cute. I am not hardcore by any means, but if you do have those graphic novels that you're passionate about, let me know about them. Now for my favorites. I think, if I remember correctly, this is the first graphic novel that I read, and I'm pretty sure it was because of a review that I read in like Library Journal or Bookmarks or one of those literary magazines, and to this point I had the perception that graphic novels were all superhero comics that were just bound into one volume, and that didn't really appeal to me. I didn't want to read, you know, boom, pow. So I had skipped them, and when I saw this and I saw little snippets of the artwork, I thought, that's actually really fascinating. So I picked it up and loved it. First off, it's a memoir about a girl growing up in revolutionary Iran. It can be very soul-bearing, and she has this good mix of very serious, dark, horrible honesty with sort of light funny bits in her inner teenage rebellious streak, and just these little unexpected bits of levity that kind of serve as a counterpoint to the darkness. And it's just kind of a masterwork. It's just really, really good, and it was a great introduction to graphic novels as a whole. It was a long while before I read any more graphic novels after that, just because I kind of thought that maybe Persepolis was a one-off. And then I had a friend on Goodreads who told me that I would really like this graphic novel series called Emma by Kaoru Mori. And Emma is about a Victorian maid. It sounded a little Austen-esque, and I was like, okay, sure, I can pick that up. This remains my favorite series. I love it. Sadly, I don't have it, but this is what the series looks like. Kaoru Mori has this great humor and this great ability to capture characters and just engage you with her stories. But my favorite part is she does these little, what she calls silly afterward manga that are about herself writing that particular volume, and she makes herself seem completely insane, and they're hilarious. The first one I read, I was sitting outside, it was summertime, and I was cackling diabolically, and I know that my neighbors were like peeking out the blinds like, what is wrong with that girl sitting out here by herself laughing? But it was just so hilarious. Anyas Ghost by Vera Brosgol. I have pushed this hardcore for the last year. I've pushed it on everyone I know that I thought might like it, everyone who hasn't read a graphic novel before. This one just works for me. It's lovely. There's such a great sense of humor and a really fun take on being a teenager and the paranormal and finding your place in the world that you're in. The art is absolutely lovely. It's very striking. It has this simple, iconic style, and it's pretty much black and white, but with this little overcast of like a bluish purple. It was lovely. I ate it up. Next I have two that are a little bit kind of oddball, and they're both by Sarah Varone. First is Bake Sale. This is really light on dialogue. There aren't a lot of words in the book, and it's such a weird concept. It's about a cupcake who works as a baker and his best friend Eggplant, who's in a rock band. It's so bizarre and quirky, and when I first started it I was like, what is this? I started reading it when I first got it, and it was just kind of weird, and I was like, you know, maybe I'm gonna put this down and I'll pick it back up later. But then I just kept reading, and I was like wanting to know what was going to happen to Cupcake. And it was just, I felt so silly, but also just, I had this light, frivolous feeling from the whole thing, and it was just weirdly engaging to watch Cupcake go about his business. And then at the end of it, it's almost like a cliffhanger, and I was like, no, you can't end it here, what happens to Cupcake? And to get that engaged in such a weird, strange little story really says something about the storytelling. It was just random and funny, and if you're looking for something unusual and sweet and a little quirky, I would say this one's definitely worth it. The other one by Sarah is Robot Dreams. This one is entirely wordless other than like this sort of sound effect words or labels on something. I'll show ya. I always open up to a freaking blank page. I did it again. yeah, it really is wordless. Pictureless too, apparently. This one, again, kind of weird protags. It's a dog and the robot that he builds, and they're separated almost immediately, and I don't want to give anything away, but this is kind of a crushing story. Like, it seems really silly, and it's all about Robot trying to get back to the dog, and I was like heartbroken at the end, and I don't know if there's more, and I sure as hell hope there is, because otherwise I might have to track Sarah down and be like, look, I need a resolution with this robot and this dog. But it was so inventive the way it was told, and it was a really bittersweet story, and I was amazed that she was able to provoke such emotion from me with such a silly kind of light concept and no words. Xena the Space Girl by Ben Hotkey. I read this one at the beginning of the year, so this one's a recent read for me, and immediately launched itself into my favorites category. It was like, I don't want to go too into detail because I am going to do a full review of it during the week, but it was like Ben creeped into my brain and pulled out everything from my childhood that I loved and just put it together, and it had this sort of magical fairy tale quality to it, and it reminded me of those books that you read when you're a kid that just completely take over your brain and make you feel like magic is a little bit possible, or like you want to be in that world. And I love when something gives me that feeling. But an even bigger draw for me, of course, was that it has a giant rat and Xena rides around on it. It's like a dream of mine. Friends with Boys by Faith Erin Hicks. This is another one that I read earlier this year and really, really enjoyed. It kind of reminds me of Anyas Ghost a little bit, in that it's this teenage girl finding her place and dealing with things, and it has a little paranormal twist. I liked the paranormal twist in this and how subtly worked in it was, and how it kind of mirrored the main action of the story. I also like just about everything I've ever read. Not just about everything. I like everything I've ever read by Jean Luen Yang. My favorite is American Born Chinese, which won a Prince Award. It's 3 stories intertwined, and they all seem separate and a little bit silly until you see how they all actually work together and are the same story, and by the end it's just, I have goosebumps right now, which you can't see because I have a sweater on, but it's just, there are no words. One of my favorite series is the Castle Waiting series by Linda Medley. This is just a no-brainer for me because it's all about fairy tales, and I am fairy tale obsessed. The stories tend to follow those side characters and background characters that you never really think about in fairy tales, and how the fairy tales affected their lives. There's really good humor, but there's also good depth to it, and it captures that fairy tale quality and that magical quality perfectly while being a little tongue-in-cheek about the whole thing. Has a little feminist streak. It all just works for me. I loved it. And of course, I don't think you can have a favorites list without listing Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This one was kind of a game changer for graphic novels. It does sort of capture that traditional comic-y superhero style, but it's so heavy and such a great metaphor. It's about World War II, and the Jews were mice and the Nazis were cats, and it's really a dark book about coming to terms with your background and your family's background and something so horrible, and it's just brilliantly done. So that's my favorites list. I hope if you're not a graphic novel reader, you'll try one of these, and if you want my opinion on which you personally should try, message me or comment with the types of things that you normally read, and I'll tell you which one I think that you like, because I think these are all worth the read, and I mean, they're graphic novels. They're not going to take you very long at all. If you are a graphic novel reader, let me know what you think of the ones that I picked, if you've read any of them, and if there are any that you love that I didn't put in my list, definitely let me know about those. So that was our beginning to graphic novel week. The rest of the week I have reviews and discussions planned for you. I'm going to try to do something every day, so it's like a little vlogathon for me. There are also things going on at thebookrat.com, including a giveaway. I've also put a linky up so that if you want to get involved in graphic novel week and link your own reviews or your own vlog posts or whatever it is that you want to share, you can come on over and link it up and everyone can get involved and check it out. I'll put the link to that below. And that was all for me for today, but I will see you tomorrow with some more awesome graphic novels.